Naomi first. What is your first impression of what's going on right now?
Well, I've been following the first couple of days. First of all, it's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to be here with Nicolas, and who I think probably has one of the hardest jobs in the world. I told him, I saw him a few months ago, but I asked him how many years he's aged since then. I just wanted to respond, actually, to something that was already said. I agree completely that when we're talking about the climate science, we should go to climate scientists, and we are so lucky to have James Hansen here tonight, who just arrived. So I think we all owe such a debt of gratitude. Really, the scientific godfather of our movement, and who raised the alarm loudly and clearly so long ago, and continues to. So all of our work has to be guided by what we're hearing from leading climate scientists. And when we're debating whether or not climate change is happening, I totally agree. This should be a debate between scientists, and it should reflect the reality of the huge scientific consensus. We are in this moment now where the scientists are saying we must act. We are also in this wonderful moment where leading engineers are telling us we can do it. We have engineers like Mark Jacobson at Stanford University who says that renewable energy is ready to get us to 100%, by mid-century. So we have the scientists telling us we must. We have the engineers saying we can. But the how we do it, is not just a job for scientists. That is a job for everybody. That has to include as many people as possible. That has to be the broadest possible spectrum. If we want the transition away from fossil fuels to be just, if we want it to build a fairer economy, to solve multiple problems at once, to be the kind of transition that will inspire huge numbers of people to fight for it, then we need to design it very deliberately to do that. And I think that we should be going to the people who are experts on economic injustice, racial injustice, who understand the fissures in our society to tell us how to do that. I don't think climate scientists are the best people to tell us how to get off fossil fuels. They're telling us we have to do it. But the how is a question for all of us.
What is the role of the politics in this? In your plan?
The role of electoral politics?
Yeah.
Or the role, everything is political. I'm Canadian, so people keep coming up to me and saying, "Oh, thank you. We're so happy. We're so happy that Stephen Harper isn't here, and we have a new government." But I would say that this is just the beginning. Electing a government that is not actively obstructionist is only the first stage, right? Seeing James Hansen here, I'm reminded that we were both arrested a few years ago. James Hansen's been arrested more than me, by the way. Many people don't know this. People think I'm such a badass, but James Hansen has been arrested many times. He doesn't just write papers, he acts on them, okay? And so 4 years ago, or it's about 4 years ago, there was a wave, the largest wave of climate civil disobedience at the time, where more than 1,200 of us were arrested outside the White House, demanding that President Obama say no to the Keystone XL pipeline, which was bringing oil from the Alberta tar sands. The day I was arrested with another leading climate scientist, Jason Box, who's one of the leading experts on the Greenland ice sheet. This is happening with our scientists, deciding that the work is so urgent that they must act on it and model the urgency with their behavior. But I would say, in terms of the answer to your question about the role of politics, if we look at the Obama who is here in Paris versus the Obama that was in Copenhagen in 2009, it's a different Obama. And I would say that the difference is not just that this is an Obama who's leaving office.
Yeah, he's not going to be re-elected anyway, so,
But I don't think it's just that. I think this is an Obama under pressure from a much more militant climate movement that isn't just negotiating in the back rooms, but is in the streets, is engaging in civil disobedience, is making it clear that climate is a decisive electoral issue, is reshaping politics. You look at what's happening in the Democratic primaries between Hillary and Bernie Sanders and O'Malley. They're all competing over who's more opposed to the Keystone XL pipeline, who's more opposed to Arctic drilling. This is because of the force of this movement. So I think we get the politics that we demand, that we put pressure on. So, as a Canadian, I feel like the worst thing we could do is repeat the Obama trajectory where we all think, oh, we got rid of the bad guy, now we can just relax and everything will be taken care of. We need to put pressure on Trudeau in this moment.
Okay. And do you think that the people in this COP are, present enough, are here enough? Because there hasn't been any movement in the streets. There hasn't been, so.
This is why I think it does matter that that protests have been banned, and I think that our politicians make the best decisions when they are under pressure. That said, we know that this agreement is not going to bring us even to where they promised last time, right? We're hearing all of this talk of ambition, and yet in 2009, these same countries came together and defined dangerous warming as anything above 2 degrees Celsius. Now, if you've read James Hansen's latest papers, 2 degrees is too dangerous. And at the time, African delegates marched through the hallways of the Bella Center and said 2 degrees is a death sentence for Africa. The island nations marched and said 1.5 to survive. It's these governments that define dangerous as 2 degrees. And here they are with emission reduction targets that bring us to 3 or more. So, how can we call that ambition when it's actually going backwards? How can we call it ambition when Kyoto was legally binding and now we're hearing that this can't be legally binding? So I think that, we depend on our climate scientists to tell us the truth about what we're doing, but I think we depend on our political analysts to tell us the truth about what our politicians are doing. And I think there's a lot of some idea that people can't handle it, like we have to just give people positive messages, and if we tell them just how bad this deal is, then they'll get so demoralized. I met with Christiana Figueres a few months ago, and she asked me, well, what would you want, as if that matters. But I said, well, what I think would be most helpful is if we abandon this language of failure and success, because we know that this is not going to be real success for the planet. Yeah. So it's actually quite antagonizing when this becomes this space for political legacy building. What we need is serious engagement. What we need is a deal that has room for improvement. We need to, my friend Bill McKibben, says we should think of these summits as like a scorecard. In Copenhagen, we have got so far, it was a scorecard that we weren't doing very well as a movement. Now in Paris, we're doing a little bit better, but we've got a ways more to go. And we have to remember that this is not the only sphere that matters, right? We're putting pressure on the courts. The investigation of Exxon, many other court challenges. James Hansen can talk about incredible court cases he's involved in. We have the court cases in the Netherlands and Belgium. We have the fossil fuel divestment movement. We have the price of renewables going down. So this isn't the only, when Christiana Figueres said never has so much been in the hands of so few, I understand why she says that. But I don't think it's true. They're not the only ones with power. And I think when we abdicate the power and say, you are the ones, save us, that's when we get ourselves into trouble. We've been engaged in a process in Canada, the Leap Manifesto. And what this is a document that was drafted during the elections that we just went through in Canada, because none of the political parties were talking about climate change in a way that took the science seriously. All the major parties were in favor of one tar sands pipeline or another. Even Justin Trudeau, who everybody is in love with now, was criticizing Stephen Harper for not doing a good enough job selling the Keystone XL pipeline. He said he was basically a bad salesman. So we basically realized, our politicians are blowing it. It's a moment, because the price of oil is so low right now, that people want to get off this commodity roller coaster. And it's also a moment when you can impose a carbon tax. Yeah. It's a moment when you can do things that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. So 60 movement leaders got together from all the different silos: labor, racial justice, indigenous rights, of course climate, migrant rights, anti-poverty activism, anti-austerity. People all came together, energy democracy. And we drafted a platform for if we took science seriously, if we took the engineers seriously, and we said we're going to get to 100% by mid-century for our whole economy, but we want to do it in a way that that recognizes that climate change is not the only crisis we face. We also have a crisis of inequality. We also have a crisis of racial and gender injustice. We also owe a debt to indigenous people in our country. What does it look like to do it? So we drafted this document, and it kind of changed the debate in the electoral campaign, and we hoped that it could maybe serve as a bit of a model, particularly for Europeans, because there is such a powerful anti-austerity discourse, and the connection is not made. This requires a total rethink about public finance. We have to find the money. The money is there. We know we can find the money for war. Why can't we find the money for public transit? Why are we selling off our public transit in this moment of all moments? Why are we increasing fares? Why are we doing these crazy things? Especially when we can look to a country like Germany and see they've created 400,000 jobs.
Okay.
Energy, democracy, work.
Thank you, Naomi.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, no questions? You have a question, yeah?
Naomi, I have read your book, so talk about the free trade, which is anti-environment, some kind of. And I want to know that so far, have you heard of some new movement about the trade that is friend to the environment?
I don't know of examples like that. I mean, there's certainly a huge amount of concern about the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the fact that climate change is really not in the agreement, and recognizing that whatever we do with trade has to reflect the reality of climate change. And we know that these agreements give tools to multinational corporations to sue national governments when they do introduce good policies. Like, for instance, a Swedish company, Vattenfall, the energy company, is suing the German government for 4.7 billion euros because the German energy transition, which is doing everything right, is interfering, they say, with their ability to profit.
Second
Yes,
question, maybe?
Second one.
We have state emergency and ecologists being arrested or forced to stay at home. And obviously it's a big blow for the civil pressure. Would you recommend to demonstrate anyway, peacefully, obviously, or what do you propose?
What do I recommend? Look, this is a personal decision for people, and this is not my country. I can't claim to understand how the French police are going to behave, and I don't want to say anything that that is going to endanger people. I participated in the Human Chain 2 days ago because I was invited by my friends at ATTAC, and I believe that they know and understand the terrain. I didn't know, they didn't offer any assurances that we wouldn't be arrested if we did so, but it was a nonviolent demonstration, and I think a very important show of strength and defiance that we believe that this civil society space is important. We know that inside the COP are big energy companies, fossil fuel companies, private water companies, big agribusiness companies, and we always knew that this COP was going to be, as previous COPs are, but especially this COP because of how much corporate sponsorship there is, that it was going to be a battle between these top-down corporate solutions and these bottom-up justice-based solutions that decentralize power. But the thing about civil society is because it doesn't have the money, we work in the currency of bodies in the streets, right? And so when that space was constricted in this way, it gives more power to those corporations inside the summit, and they get much more power. Like, Bill Gates, was able to monopolize the news in the first day. Well, not monopolize it, obviously there were lots of world leaders there, but he has a very particular worldview, and I believe he has good intentions, but I know that Bill Gates is looking for an energy miracle, and that he systematically belittles existing renewable technologies as cute, as he's called them, and things that we can do now. I mean, he talks about public funding for R&D. What about public funding for public transit? What about public funding for decentralized renewable energy? We need to do all of that. And we can't let the billionaires have a monopoly on this. We have to be able to push back. Nicolas and other groups asked me to endorse their March for Me campaign, and I didn't endorse it because I don't believe anyone can march for me. I don't believe we can offset our activism. I think it's fantastic that people marched in other cities, but I think we have to march in this city too.
Okay, thank you.